This is quite an honor to have you on board, to have a conversation with us about data management and governance in the space. And this is fortunate because we have expertise from cross-cutting fields, from academia, from data governance, from leadership, technical expertise as well. So to get us started, I'm going to have to give or throw this to Stella to take on the first question, which is basically, I mean, you all understand where we are from the presentations yesterday and from our experience in life, as our careers in terms of or stakeholders in other observation. So my first question to you is, what are the biggest resource constraints faced by developing countries when it comes to establishing robust data infrastructure for EO data?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think for me it's two things. Capitalization, as you mentioned, it's one of the biggest things because a lot of the things with the use of new technology, especially in developing countries, require a lot of capital finance, a lot of support, but this can be leveraged by a lot of partnerships, so that's one of the things. Two is the human constraint. That means we don't have a lot of skilled people. And even if we have, there is new emerging technologies that's coming up, so there needs to be a lot of training, there needs to be a lot of development awareness of how this new technology can be used in terms of the user needs. So these two are really one of my challenges I feel that we currently face.
Thank you so much. And there's actually an ongoing parallel session on, like women in EO. So, but thank you for coming to this side so that you can also share with us. But I have to throw the second one on you. Like, what can you tell us as far as your journey is concerned and the issue that you mentioned on skilled, or rather like limited skills in the region, especially because we have, like you here and what you can tell us and maybe some of the students who are here as well.
I think from my personal perspective, I think a lot is helped by mentorship. So I feel like for example, one of my lecturers is here when I was doing my bachelor's, and one of my mentors is there, Dr. Mubea, who is also my lecturer. So I think a lot of mentorship, awareness that what current technologies are coming up, what needs to be enhanced, what skills we need to be doing and participating in. Secondly is knowledge awareness. I feel this is one of still the biggest gap. There's emerging trend technologies that are coming up, and I'm happy that the discussion before us was AI. And I realized a lot of people know AI because it's being talked, but not many people know how do I utilize AI in my current user need as a person, as an organization. How do we come to a place where we explain that with this new emerging technology, this is how space-based technology can be used to leverage it. And then lastly is there's less people are speaking about the technology that is coming up in terms of how do we partner together. Because I realized when we come and say financial constraint is happening, we can also decide to say how can we partner with, like for example, OGP that's currently doing the technical or the knowledge awareness. So I think for me, essential is mentorship, knowledge awareness, and 3 partnerships. That has really helped me in terms of understanding what is currently coming up, what needs to be done, and what knowledge, skill, awareness I need to upskill on. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I know our energies are running quite low. So before we forget the presentation that we just had, I'm going to throw the second one to you. How can developing countries navigate the complexities of their legal landscapes to ensure clear ownership rights, access protocols, and fair data sharing practices for EO data? I'm giving this to you because of the presentation that you just had, so it's kind of in the same theme.
That right there, I was on mute in real life. I think there are a couple of things. One is being aware exactly where your gaps are. Right, for Kenya, one of the things that we've done, and I think we've done a really good job with it so far, is put in place a data protection infrastructure. And then the awareness that has now been garnered by all the awareness raising, I think has helped us get there. That's like a very big important piece in terms of how do you navigate the management of EO data when EO data also has personal information that can identify people's assets. And with that gap kind of addressed, I think that the next gaps that are addressed now are coming up as we go along. The thing about legal and regulatory frameworks is they tend to be remedies. And sometimes you have an issue that a remedy hasn't been contemplated, hadn't been anticipated. And I think one of the things that we need to do is be a bit forgiving, a bit more flexible when we come up against those kinds of challenges, so that there's a multi-stakeholder engagement, more participatory approach to closing those gaps, so that we can have more sustainable, more inclusive access to EO data. But the basic infrastructure, our laws, the Constitution, first of all, the provisions of the Constitution, the access to information legislation, the data protection legislation, that family of legislation, I think, has already laid for us quite a bit of that framework. Fortunately, that is also now happening around Africa. There's some normative frameworks around this, and that also helps us close some other additional gaps. Cybersecurity, for instance, a lot of this by default ends up in cyberspace. So, also understanding what we need to do to protect our cyberspace and our cyber assets, even when those are hosting very critical infrastructure, especially because they're hosting critical infrastructure. That becomes an additional concern. And now, we have quite a bit of those building blocks in place. So the navigation is a bit less of a challenge, but in some countries, they're still having to deal with those gaps.
Thank you so much. I think we can all agree with him, especially on the issue of data protection. It's a hot topic, even as we currently are tabling the finance bill. It's at the center of it all. So, Prof, we are coming to you. First, allow us to hear from Davis. First of all, greet us and tell us about global partnerships, and then we can maybe throw one at you.
Gerald, that's very, very risky, because I could spend the rest of the session actually talking about the partnership. But we are a global network. We are an initiative of the United Nations Foundation, and we work with multi-stakeholder partnerships, multilateral agencies, big and small companies, anybody who's really interested in how we can harness data for sustainable development. And we work at two different levels: political, to elevate the importance of data for sustainable development, and then at the more technical level, to broker partnerships between everybody who's in this room, identify where the gaps are, really work with partners to develop solutions and document and share learning in ways that then advance the agenda for sustainable development. So that's basically who we are in a summary.
No, thank you. But in the spirit of partnerships, what's your opinion on how basically existing data infrastructure and resources, and how they can be leveraged to or adapted to improve EO data management capabilities in the country?
I think it's both a technical and political question. In many places, and of course Kenya is not an exception, but it really stands out in Kenya. We love our space. We love our own. We want to do things in a particular room and plant a flag on it. And so everybody wants to develop their own solution and sit on it and work with it. There's a lot of competition. Some of it is necessary, but a lot of it is not necessary. And that makes it really difficult, because there's lots of duplication of efforts. So if we were talking, for example, about interoperability of systems, just connecting databases to share data and information. Mushiri can attest from the OGP conversations. Everybody has a mandate that is legal or comes from a particular standpoint. And those conversations are very difficult. But it's doable. With a bit of, leveraging emerging technologies, it's actually possible to do it and be much more efficient. If Vihiga has developed the lab, why should all the other counties really develop their own labs? When we have cloud technologies, why can't we invest in Vihiga, scale it up a little bit more, build the capacity there, and allow other counties to use that infrastructure? Do we need to have 46 other counties really setting up their own labs. And so we just need to think creatively. I think the second one is there's lots of what you'd call legacy systems. We talk about big data, we talk about Earth observations, but when you look at the computers and the laptops that people have, forget about the phones, the stuff that people are using in their offices. Lots of them are legacy equipment, and that potentially could be a challenge. But there's an opportunity really to upgrade some of these existing systems, connect them, and of course work collaboratively to ensure that we maximize what is existing, and then we can strengthen by importing and building new systems on top of this. But I think the last challenge I would say is we talk a lot, but we don't do, which is both political but also technical. Everybody understands the importance of Earth observations. We see the opportunity, but the actions don't follow the narrative. And I think we've done such a poor job of ensuring the general public really understands what this is all about. Once you step out of this room and even go to the reception of this place, somebody will tell you they've never heard about this stuff. And they are really not interested because they don't see the value, and we've done very little to actually demonstrate. And it applies to the politicians and everybody who holds power and the resources. So there are very few who get it and who are willing to invest both money, human, technical, and other financial resources to ensure that we leverage this opportunity. So there's a bit of work to be done there, I believe. And partnerships is key, of course. Linking all these, especially private sector, because they are always ahead of the game. There's opportunities for public-private partnerships, but sustainable models of those partnerships. So it's not just partnership generally. Identifying opportunities to say, we're going into this, but it's long-term. It's 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. And, there's scratch my back, I scratch yours. We always just expect to be given, but, people have to make money. There has to be ways in which, we partner, but also create incentives for partners to be invested in those particular partnerships and to support them in the long term. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sure the audience might have a question or two for you. So we all know how Earth observation data is quite, heavy in terms of storage. And a presentation just before us was talking about, cloud computing and everything else. So, Prof, to you, you're not just, from the academic world, but you're also like a seasoned data management expert. My question to you would be, what are the opportunities and challenges for cloud data storage, especially for Earth observation? Is this something that we can borrow as developing countries? Thank you.
Thank you, Bwana Igon. Let me start by demystifying the term cloud storage. Cloud storage is using a third-party storage infrastructure for you to store, in some cases, process, and also access the data that you have stored there. As developing countries, we know we have so many challenges, and one of those challenges is limited storage. Cloud computing provides a very big platform where we can be able to store data, especially AO data, because we know AO data can be very big, yeah, because it's data that is collected continuously, and when we look at the just a single file of an AO data with all the bands, especially for multispectral data, you realize that it is a lot of data, and this is collected continuously for several applications, and therefore having such a platform can be able to support scalability, where we can be able to scale what we have. We can be able to store and also to upscale on what we are collecting, because we know that we have a platform where we can be able to store data, process and access that data. Also, in initial cost of setting up a physical infrastructure is very expensive. And therefore, having a system whereby you can only pay for what you store, you only pay for that space, it also removes the issue of you setting up that infrastructure. But of course, we shall also look at it in the negative, in the challenges part. But initial cost is usually a very good area to start from. Also, the issue of accessibility and collaboration. We can be able to access, all of us, we can be able to access that data when it's in cloud concurrently, and we can do concurrent processing on the system or on the platform, or we can be able to download concurrently. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, so long as you have internet connectivity, still you can be able to access the data. Another issue that I think is important when it comes to recovery, most of cloud computing systems, they have very good recovery mechanisms. And therefore, the data that you have uploaded in the system, you are sure if in an unfortunate event where data is lost, you are sure you will be able to get the data. But as they say, there is no good road without a bend. And I want to get to the bend now, or the corner. It has a few challenges. One of the challenges being data security. I think that is where everyone says, I'm not sure. Giving a third party your sensitive data can be a very big challenge. We have seen situations whereby people are suing companies for breaching data privacy, where someone hacked the system and they took personal data. Such a sensitive data, we have sensitive data even in Earth observation, and this can be a very big issue. Another area where there is also a big issue with cloud storage is the issue of cost. I talked about initial cost, but in the long run, it can be very expensive. It can be very expensive because you will have to pay for the platform for the rest of the time we'll be using it. And haba na haba hujaza kibaba. That is Swahili word that says in small quantities you get to it balloons to a bigger thing. And therefore, there is also another one, actually, vendor lock-in. Vendor lock-in is whereby you have stored a lot of data in a cloud computing platform, and when you want to exit, it becomes very expensive for you to exit that platform. And therefore, you are forced to remain on the platform just because of that. But as I conclude, I think we see there is very good reasons for us to have cloud computing platforms and using those cloud computing. But one must weigh the benefits and also the challenges. Do your cost-benefit analysis. And if you find it is good for you, go for it. But for me, I'll advocate for a hybrid system where you have some data stored on the cloud, but you also have some stored on the physical infrastructure, which you can be able to manage. Thank you.
Well, fantastic. What can I say? Thank you for unpacking this topic for us, and kind of at the end of the day, arriving at a balance of hybrid systems, which kind of get the best of both worlds, right? So allow me to just also take it over to the audience, whether there is any kind of question or comment or kind of follow up. or just to make sure that we are still awake and alive? We can take one or two questions, maybe then we wind up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Peter Hongo. I work for Wildlife Research and Training Institute. My question goes to, it's about, you talked of data security and data protection. And I think that for you to protect or to give security to the data, we must have data compiled in one location. So I think that we need to have something like, or we can discuss something like national spatial data infrastructure before everything else. Thank you.
We can take one more. Daktari.
Thank you so much. Kenneth Ubea with Digital Africa. Mine is just a comment that this is a very wonderful panel. And just to add to that, the progress of such a session has been possible through the champions in the different institutions. Like with GPSTT, I know there are some champion institutions which drive their program, like the work with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, just that someone was supposed to join us. Then the work with Stella, I know there are some champions in different countries that make your work actually grow. So it's more from the Earth observation to the data, to the people on the ground who actually present and help us to work in an enabling ecosystem. So it was just an addition. Thank you so much, panel.
Thank you, thank you. So maybe just meanwhile, just to kind of give reaction, disagreement or agreement to our friend at WRTI, I think Mr. Nyaga, this is for you to kind of react to the issue of like NSDI and data security and privacy.
Thank you. In fact, I was just cross-checking to see where we left off on the National Spatial Data Infrastructure conversation. I know that was, and the government had advanced that quite far. There was Vision 2030 were leading some of that work. I'm not sure, I've not been keeping my eye on that, on the NSDI conversation, but I think people from the Ministry of ICT or Vision 2030 would have a more updated standpoint. But it does have a cascading impact also on county governments. And as we now start trying to think about how to protect data and think about it more holistically in the context of this digital infrastructure that is national and ours, it means those are things that we need to go back and check whenever that conversation now picks up again. And also the issue of cross-border data flows, which is now a really big issue for us. The data protection law already says what we can move and what we cannot move out of the country. And now that means that there's some things we cannot do on cloud just by going on and provisioning a service, like Google Cloud Compute or Amazon. We can now have to check and see where those servers are domiciled. So the issue of cross-border data flows now becomes an area to consider. We already have some of that happening now. I know our technology company, private sector partners now have a growing physical presence in the country. I know Amazon have an office here now as well, and I think some edge infrastructure is in the country, and they're moving forward with some of these things. But I think for data protection and cybersecurity, I think we already have quite a few things in place. The issue is how well are they functioning? When was the last time someone was successfully prosecuted for hacking? I think it was zero as it stands, but the legislation is there. The frameworks that are in place. I think it's how we bring them to life that we need to put a little bit more work on. So moving things from paper to practice. Yeah.
No, thank you. I can see the Master of Ceremonies giving me serious eye contact, like, we don't have the whole day here. So just 1 minute, just a parting shot. We can start from Davis.
We need a recognition that the NSDI, for example, is just as good as the tarmac roads that we are building. You know, if we are going to really accelerate and leapfrog as a country, we have to invest in these things. We have to stop talking and doing. And so, you know, you can just imagine if we implemented the NSDI and that counties, innovators, companies, you know, institutions of learning, and it actually touches literally all the aspects of development. And so by focusing on this, and we don't have to do everything at once, but I think a first approach that was mentioned earlier could be quite useful. And through partnerships, it's actually possible to do a lot more. And we can create incentives for a lot of private sector partners to invest in this. And so I still gravitate back to partnerships, political will and governance, and tapping into young innovators that we saw yesterday in the streets. You know, there's a lot of energy there that I think could be useful in terms of really making significant progress here in Kenya. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Prof, what's your parting shot?
I would say in a geospatial workflow, data is the most critical aspect. And that observation is changing the world. And its management and governance is very critical. We must go back to the conversation of us having national data spatial data infrastructure. We have people who have done a lot of work. We have data that is lying. Data is time limited. We have had that data expires, and a lot of data has expired just by people keeping their servers. People want to use the data. We have a lot of duplication of efforts, people collecting the same data, because we don't have somewhere where people can be able to access and pay a small fee for the maintenance of the system. We must have a clearing house or a warehouse for all our national data, where people can access, people can be able to upload their data and also get value for that data. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So Stella, what's your parting shot?
For me is governance, as said before, but my focus would be interoperability and standardization, because we are all dealing with the same data, just from different providers. And so we need to have a framework in which the more the new technology comes, the more we have regulations that provide standardization at all levels, and that interoperability between different partners or different organizations working with the same data is key. Secondly is we need to evaluate what are the skills and capacity that we currently have. So before we bring in the new trend, we kind of ask ourselves, is the skill set that we have ready for this new trend? Is it usable within the current needs that we have? If not, we first go back and ensure that what we have is actually usable, and we have proof for that before we upscale on new technologies.
Excellent, thank you, well summarized. Mr. Nyaga.
I think we're leaving a lot of opportunities on the table untouched. So my parting shot is, let's maximize whatever we already have in our hands, even as we push forward. So one of the things that we have in our hands is a satellite in space. So shout out to Kenya Space Agency. Let's get that thing working. Let's get the data out. Let's demonstrate what we could do with medium res-ish satellite imagery that we own, and make a case for the next satellite that Kenya puts in space. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So that marks the end of our session. We are really grateful to you for taking the time to listen to the audience, to the panelists and their opinions and what they have to say. So what do we do next? Is it the photo or we just go?
Well, first we give you a round of applause for that fantastic work, Gerald, and all the panelists again. We do have a photo. I think we'd love all of you to line up and smile for. I think you don't have to look at me, Bwana Mushiri. You can look at the camera. Unfortunately, I left my iPhone 17 at home, so All right, let's give them another round of applause. Fantastic, fantastic discussion around data management and governance. Thank you, Mushiri Nyaga, Stella Chalangat, Davis Adieno, Prof. Geoffrey Makoha, and of course, our moderator, Gerald Diagon. One final round of applause until they leave the stage. I think, Stella, you're keeping them applauding by staying on stage, and we don't want to stop. Thank you very much for the fantastic discussion that we have all had today. Ladies, gentlemen, we are officially done in this ballroom for today. I understand there is another discussion. They started a little late. I'll tell you about that in a moment. However, we are officially done today. Thank you very much for reaching the end of day 2 of the Kenya Space Expo and Conference 2024. We have tea that is also lined up for all of you. That will be in the area that we had our tea break, so you would need to walk out through the back exit. You'll turn left and you'll come in through the exhibitor booths and be able to have some tea. However, I do understand that the concurrent session that was happening at the same time as this one, which is on space for women, opportunities for women in the space and STEM sector, that is happening in the main ballroom 3, which is at the far end of the corridor. You can also attend that if you so wish, but for today, we are very happy to have come to the end. Tomorrow, we will begin promptly at 8:30, and we have multiple plenary sessions again. Many of them will be happening here entirely. Again, I encourage you to refer to the exhibition booklet, guide, or scan the QR code, or simply go directly to the Kenya Space Agency website and look for the information. You'll see what's happening tomorrow. We are starting at 8:30. Today we ended up starting a little late because we had to wait